This is the 18 Strong Podcast with Jeff Palsenburg, episode number 22.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Palsenburg.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the 18 Strong Podcast. This is Jeff Palsenburg, your host, and today I've got another very special guest and a great episode for you guys today with Mr. Chris Lutes from Vancouver, British Columbia. He works at the Tour Performance Lab with the guys and gals up there, Jason Glass, which you may recognize the name of their performance studio. And Chris is one of their junior golf coaches for the Tour Lab program. And he is actually the lead of the Labsters program, which is the developmental golf and fitness classes that they have for the youngsters, the real young kids. I believe he said from ages 4 to 14. And they're doing some pretty unique stuff up there. They're teaching these kids to become highly competitive athletes for the ones that want to go on that track, but they're also just developing special skills as far as anything that relates to sports, athletics, dynamic movement, that type of stuff. So these kids grow up loving the game and wanting to play for a long time. And this is especially an important episode for me as a dad, as a coach that works with younger kids. I've got a 6-year-old, soon-to-be 7-year-old boy named Sam. And I've got 2 youngsters after that, my daughter Reese and my 17-month-old Grant. And so as a dad, I want to learn how to raise them right as far as athletics. And, this is part of what I do in a professional level too. But these guys are doing some cool stuff as far as working with the very, very young kids, not just teaching them all about golf, but teaching them about, sports and athletic movements, which Chris will get into. So, some of the questions that we tackled today are, what is too young to get these kids involved in this program? And Chris may surprise you with some of the answers that he has. What's the right way to do it? And what are some of the things that people are doing out there or the mistakes that we've made that we're doing incorrectly? And, what are some things that we've learned and especially Chris has learned through his experiences? And then how do you fuel their love, the kids' love for the game? How do you teach them without being overbearing, without them ending up hating you for pushing them into some sort of training sessions or coaching or just making them go out and play? So how do you fuel the love for the game and kind of teeter on that line of not pushing them too far, but giving them all the support and encouragement that they want and need to maybe have that extra little push? So, we also discuss the scholarship idea and, what happens when you start to get near that point, and when do you really start to think about that stuff and have communication and conversations around that? And then also, lastly, we're going to talk about how do you then, getting away from the kids, how do you keep it fun for the adults? A lot of us play golf, we have fun with it, but, it gets frustrating at times. Some of the very serious golfers out there, I think, struggle with remembering that this is a game and games are meant to be played to have fun, not always just about being competitive and, scoring your best. So I'm going to encourage you guys to really listen to what Chris has to say in regards to, keeping it fun and ways to do that. So with all that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this episode with Chris Lutes, and I'll catch you on the other side. All right. Well, Chris, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to catch up. Yeah,
absolutely. So for the listeners out there, Chris and I got to meet out in California, out in Carlsbad, and Chris is at the Tour Performance Lab up in Surrey, British Columbia, and he works with, Jason Glass and all the guys up there, and he is the lead coach for the Labsters program. So, Chris, we're going to let you share a lot about your background and what you guys have going on up there, but I just wanted to highlight something that I saw in your bio on the Tour Labs website, and it's not that you're just a lead coach for the Labsters program, but you're a junior golf superhero. And the quote under that said that you have the ability to entertain, inspire, lead, and motivate junior golfers to love the game as much as you do. And I think that's just a great first compliment to you, which I'm hoping
For
that
sure, for sure.
that the guys there, they obviously love what you do and have a lot of faith in what you do. And so I want to share today with the audience, and this is coming from me as a fitness professional and a guy in the golf world, but also as a dad with a young, 3 young kids. I've got a 6-year-old. He loves to kind of go out and hit the ball around. But today's going to be a little different for our listeners, talking about maybe more so your kids than yourself, and how we kind of get them to love the game. So, Chris, give us a little bit of background on you and how you got involved with golf, how you got involved with the Tour Lab, and everything you guys have going on.
Right on. Thanks a lot, Jeff. Basically, the number one thing that I'm really happy about on that bio, because it was actually written by someone other than myself, was the fact just highlighting the love of the game of golf. I was very lucky. I grew up in a very small part of the lower mainland of British Columbia. And my father was a golfer, and he used to go out after work probably 3 or 4 nights a week through the better months of the year. And I was about 7 years old and saw him hopping in the truck with his regular golfing partner and asked where he was going. And he said he's heading off to the golf course, and I asked if I could come with him. And that was my first intro to the game, just walking around the golf course with him and just watching him have so much fun with his friends and kind of just seeing the beautiful place of the golf course. I think I got a pretty early bug for it, I should say. Soon after that, I started trying to play a little bit with some cut-down clubs that they got me. And really, it was just something that I enjoyed because everything seemed like a puzzle to me. I was always that kid that would pick out the magazine or the activity books at the drugstore and try and solve the mazes before my mom would catch me fiddling through the book. So golf kind of seemed like a puzzle. It was everything was so different, every shot unique. So I think it got me early because of that. And it's been part of my life for 23 years now. So pretty lucky to have it as a career and get to share with kids and families that same experience that I had 23 years ago with my dad.
And I saw that you gave your first lesson at the age of 15. Is that right?
Yeah, it was one of those kind of strange instances. I was always the quiet kid. I didn't like talking in front of the class. I was more of a listener and observer than I was a presenter. And in high school, my golf skills were getting pretty good. This would have been early grade 10 year for me, yep. And our phys ed teacher wanted to introduce some golf to some of the other classes, some of the younger grades. So he didn't really know how to teach it, and he knew I was pretty good at it. So he said, "Do you want to try?" And that pretty much opened me up, broke me out of my shell, so to speak. And nothing like being in front of at that point it was probably 75 kids in grade 8 or 9. These are 13 and 14-year-old kids to really wet your feet in teaching and instruction.
Yeah, no kidding. Standing in front of a bunch of your peers is one of the biggest fears of most people in their lives.
Absolutely. It was something I wasn't very comfortable with until that point. I kind of just was thrown in the deep end and see how you do. And it went really well. I had a lot of fun with it. And from that point forward, my focus kind of shifted. I was competing a little bit on the junior circuit, so to speak. I was having a little bit of success and enjoying the competition and getting to that point where, geez, do I want to really push for this and try and make it something that I could do for the rest of my life? And the playing side started to slowly fade, and it turned into being able to, help my dad or help my dad's friends or help some of my buddies that I played with all the time. We constantly had our crummy video cameras working back then and trying to help each other with our swings. So I kind of fell in love with the sharing of the game side of things and trying to help people enjoy the game of golf a little bit more.
And so did you start teaching on your own, or were you then working at a facility or a club? And then how did you get hooked up with the guys at the Tour Lab?
Right. Right. At that point, one of the assistant professionals at the club I was a junior member at, we had kind of become kind of kindred spirits. He would help me out a lot, and we really spoke the same language, thought about a lot of the same sort of stuff, asked each other a lot of questions about the game, and he became a very good friend and actually became my first employer in the golf industry at a little town just maybe 20 minutes away from where I grew up. So I worked for him And he mentored me on the pro shop side of things and encouraged me to teach as much as I could, and got the junior program going at that club. Small population, but it was still great to interact with the families and the kids. But the season in that area was very much limited to busy summer season. A lot of people from the city of Vancouver here have second homes, and they go up there and spend their summers there. So I would have the families there over the summer, but during the majority of the year, it was mostly the senior age members, and a lot of them even actually ended up going south for the winter. So things were fairly slow there, and I just needed a bigger pond. So at that point, this would have been 2008. I made the move to Vancouver and started teaching at a driving range, probably kind of central in the city. Fairly large facility and involved with junior programs there. And at that point, I was playing some of the local assistance tours. So competing a little bit on a one-day event sort of thing, a sectional, I guess you guys would call it. Mm-hmm. And I met Matt Palsenburg. So Matt Palsenburg is our lead instructor at the Tour Performance Lab. And he was someone that I played quite a few rounds with. So as it always happens, those relationships you build on the golf course, so valuable, right? And that's something we'll have to chat about more for sure a little bit later. But that became a good friendship, and we didn't. It's not that we hung out a lot. We would talk periodically, and he started bugging me when he started to get the Tour Performance Lab with Jason. When they started getting it going, he was bugging me. You've got to come down and check this out. And I had always kind of hummed and hawed it, and was already tied in. Made an agreement with my current director of instruction, and the timing was just never right. When it got to that point, this would have been 2012, just the start of the 2012, when I went down to meet Jason, and we talked about possibly adding me to the team. And at that point, the lab was still quite young and was just kind of building. They didn't have a set position for me. So I just was going in and putting in my time getting to meet the kids and watch how Jason and Matt worked and how they developed their program for the elite side of things, the kids that were already developed and had chosen golf, the 13, 14 plus sort of age category, and started to assist with them. We grew the size of the lab over that next year, and it justified me having a position where there were kids that I was coaching in that age group. So still working with the older crew mostly. And through meetings with Matt just decided, we need to reach out and have that younger kids category happening at the lab. And he asked if that was something that I might want to do, knowing that I originally came to work with the older, slightly more competitive, already developed golfers. And that was something that absolutely I was all about, was to get something going with the younger kids. And from there, we formed the Labster program. And this is a program that lets kids experience the game of golf as young as age 4. So we're really reaching out to even the preschool age kids and allowing things to progress. If those kids are moving along with us, great. If we set the bar and get them started in the game and they move somewhere else, is that's great too. We're just hoping to get kids playing golf and get kids active through that Labsters program.
That's awesome. And I love the name, the Labsters. It's just such a, it's such a great tie-in, obviously, with the Tour Performance Lab, but, just kind of gives them their own unique identity too, because
absolutely,
it's all about, being part of a club and a team and,
yep.
and, making it cool and fun for them.
Absolutely.
So I know that we have a lot of professionals that listen to this show as far as, teaching pros, fitness people, but we've also obviously got a lot of parents and dads and, hopefully some moms that are listening and kind of want to know a little bit more about, hey, what do I do with my kid? They're showing some interest in golf, or, we play golf as a family and we want to get them involved. So if you could give us an idea just of kind of the structure of what you guys do there. I know you said you have, youngsters as old as 4 up to 14 in your program. Mm-hmm. How does it lay out? How many times a week do you see some of these kids, and what are some of the things that you're doing and all that good stuff?
Sure. So the base program for what we run with our kids, I'll just go through the age categories. The 4 to 6 year olds. So we take a 4, a 5, and a 6 year old, and we'll keep them as one pod. They up until we're going to relaunch in February. Prior to this, we were doing 35-minute sessions with those kids, and most of them would come in once a week. So there would be a time slot during a weekday mid-afternoon. So any of the kids that had a preschool in the morning could attend in the afternoon on a weekday. And then we also ran 1 hour of classes or one session of classes on a Sunday. So those kids in a 35-minute session for the 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, the typical class won't look a lot like a golf class. These kids are developing so fast. They're just learning sponges. So the big focus there is getting them to move really, really well. All the crawling, running, jumping, skipping, throwing, kicking, catching, all the things that comprise being an all-around athlete is our number one focus for that age group. And at first, parents have asked, well, we're at a golf class. Why aren't we doing golf constantly? Well, the nice thing is you can use a lot of these other sports to introduce golf skills and introduce how the game is played and how the game works and why certain areas are not desirable, the hazards on the golf course, and why other areas are desirable. Just by using some simple sports objects such as soccer balls and baseballs, volleyballs, frisbees, all these things that don't look golfy that can make it fun for the kid to experience the game and not have to worry about possibly not getting the ball airborne, because that can be a big roadblock for some people that just don't like that sense of failure or the way things they might shut down if it doesn't go their way instantly.
Is that ever a hard conversation to have? Not hard, but is it ever hard for the parents to comprehend that hey, my kid's supposed to be in a golf class and you guys haven't hit a ball yet?
Yeah, when I first went down and did my TPI level 2 junior training, that was one of the first things that came up in the group discussion. And our instructors there, Milo was our lead instructor during that training. And he handled it so well, because as long as you're prepared for that question to be asked, as long as you know that it's coming, it's pretty easy to explain why these skills are valuable. The weight shift that's needed in throwing or kicking is going to directly translate to what the golfer needs to do. Being able to have balance on each foot independently is something that every golfer is going to need to do. That doesn't have to mean that this person is the best soccer player or the best baseball player, but having the ability to do the movements makes the job for the golf professional so much easier down the road. And we always remind the parents that it's important to see this as a long-term development plan. With our golfers, we like to say it's more of a 20-year development for that golfer. It would be great if that player is amazing at 15 years old. I tell this story a lot. We'll give them high fives. They get trophies. We go eat ice cream. We have a good time. But if you had that golfer that was playing and they were the most amazing 25-year-old in the world, they still get high fives. They still get trophies. We still go get ice cream at the end, but they might get $1 million check with it.
Right.
So let's let this love of the game build early. Create that first, because if they love it, they're going to work the hardest. That's something you can't really you can't coach someone with that doesn't have a love for it. They're not going to put the hours in that they need to. They're not going to keep that focus when the other distractions in life present themselves. So if we can get them to love it, if we can get them to even just love moving, and they pick another sport by chance, I think I've done my job well, just to get them active.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. I was having a conversation about that today, the love of the game and how that inspires a kid to go and be creative and energetic and do stuff on his own rather than be forced into a box of different skills and drills and things like that. Yeah. So we could talk about that all day long.
Absolutely.
So how about how about, sorry to interrupt there.
No, it's good.
How about the next level of age group? So we talked about the 4 to 6 year olds, and then what do you guys do moving forward from there?
After let's say if they move through the 4 to 6 program, so this is a kid that's going to be with us for a few years, they're hopefully going to have that foundation from seeing us. If they don't, that's when we start splitting our classes a little bit into levels, and that's something we're excited about for February. Is now that things have been developed for a couple seasons, we have a pool of kids that we can now put in appropriate levels. We want to make sure that still there's a major focus on these fundamental movement skills and fundamental sports skills, making sure that it's never neglected. I don't want to assume that that's being covered at home. It's just sometimes doesn't get done because of life and time pressures, right? Mm-hmm. So we make sure that that's a big part of it, but we try to introduce more golf-specific skills at this point. So now there will be definitive sections of the class that will be golf-specific skills, chipping, putting, rules, etiquette, full swing, and course management in a more real scenario. So I'm starting to slowly remove some of the non-golf equipment and add in more equipment when we do our, what I call simulated golf holes around our practice facility.
Nice. And that's the 6-year-olds.
Yep. And they go all the way up to 12. So it's a large age range, but with that, we don't seem to have a lot of speed bumps with it. A lot of times we can get kids of at least close to the same age, and it's more important that we group them closer by a developmental age and not always their chronological age. I'm sure parents out there will see this if they look around just in their kids' peer group, especially in that 10, 11-year-old group. You're going to see some kids that are really, really tall and quite big, and then there could be some kids that are quite small. And chronologically, they might be, a couple weeks or even a month apart on a calendar, but developmentally they look like they might be 2 or 3 years apart. So it's important to try our best to group always by developmental age.
Yeah, it's like that kid that I had in grade school when we were in 4th grade or something like that, and he's almost dunking a basketball and shaving every morning before he comes to grade school.
Exactly. How am I supposed to compete with that guy?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then so as you get up to the 14-year-olds, then does that get a little bit more specific golf-wise? Yeah.
With those kids, we're basically full equipment, and that could happen even earlier. What I do around our practice facility, we don't have a ton of space for our short game, but if you're thinking on your feet, you can make it work. So with the youngest kids, we might play 3 or 4 holes of golf that I've set up in various areas around the short game area, where their tee shot might be kicking a soccer ball. Okay, so wherever that soccer ball stops, the next piece of equipment is a frisbee. So they have to throw the frisbee. If the soccer ball they kicked or the frisbee that they threw ends up on the putting green, they replace it with a real ball and then putt. That's how we're able to kind of strategize. If there are obstacles in the way, the soccer ball, if it enters the obstacle, there might be a penalty, like throwing the frisbee with your opposite hand, your non-regular throwing hand. So moving around the obstacles is beneficial. Having to play the terrain with that kick, be aware of the hills and slopes, with the frisbee being aware of the wind and how that can affect how it flies, and then obviously putting to finish. As the kids get older, one of those pieces of equipment will start to remove from the scenario. So they may kick the soccer ball, but then if the soccer ball is not on the green, maybe they get to hit a chip shot. So as their skills develop in these areas from seeing us over a period of time, their skills in putting, their skills in chipping develop, their skills in pitching develop, we can start removing that equipment and making it so it's a little bit more of a real scenario. And even introducing limited flight. I really love the product Almost Golf Balls. A little plug for Almost Golf Balls out there.
Yeah.
These things are great because you can play on a busy practice area. Obviously, let these people know that there might be some foam balls flying around.
Right.
But we can play holes of golf where it might only be 50 yards, but it feels like it's 200. because of the way these balls fly. So using that sort of equipment, trying to just use a small space and make it as big as possible.
Yeah, I love the creativity of it. Just using the different things and changing out the different devices and stuff like that, giving them a different feel, but still forcing them to try different things because there are penalties and very cool. Yeah. I really like that. So let's get into a very hot topic these days, and that's the idea of when do we start to bring these kids in and start to specialize a little bit more. I work in a facility where we have a lot of hockey players. We've got a lot of great youth hockey players. We work with some younger golfers, and it seems like year after year. I mean, I grew up playing competitive soccer, and it just seems like every year I see kids getting younger and younger, and the sport's getting a little bit more serious and a little bit more serious, and they're starting to train at younger ages. Let's talk about your thoughts on the whole specialization thing. What's the right age to start kind of divvying into, bringing down to one sport, or what are your thoughts?
That's a great question. This is one that gets people pretty fired up. It gets me pretty passionate as well. And I just like to think of it kind of like using some of our great examples from up here in Canada. We have to use Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky, the great one. I mean, the best, right? Yep. People may think that, he played hockey all the time. That's all he ever did. But as soon as the season was over, his dad took the skates and hung him up. Said, nope, you're not playing summer league. You're not doing any of that stuff. You're getting away from hockey, and you are going to play some baseball if you want to play a sport, right? You don't want to be just sitting around. I want you active. Let's play baseball. It's a pretty good complementary sport for a hockey player. The seasons don't really clash, most of the time anyways. Some families would be shocked to hear that, especially some of the hockey families. But his father really felt that it was important to give him a break from hockey, almost make it so he was hungry, just craving to get back on the ice instead of ever at all, even for a second, dreading it. And that was a strategy that was used all the way up until he started playing junior hockey, like high-level junior hockey. So as a kid, he was not a one-sport athlete. He was a multi-sport athlete. And I think a good starting point or rule of thumb for when to start picking that one sport would be after that puberty growth spurt. So once they're done, once they've made it through puberty, that would be a pretty safe time to start picking one. Up until that point, do as much as you possibly can. Be as varied as you can. And I think that the athlete will be better for it, both from a performance, an injury prevention standpoint, but also just from that desire and that love and wanting to play it, because we don't want them to burn out. That's the big scary thing is push really early. They might end up hating it, and I just don't ever want that to happen. I don't want a kid to ever push a sport away because they just got sick of it.
Yeah, I've seen it too many times where you've got a kid that's a fantastic athlete, and you just start because he or she may be the best one on the field or the best one on the course, and so it's like, let's do as much as we can, win as many trophies as possible. And I've actually talked to a couple of the hockey players that we have in our facility that are playing at the highest level, playing Division I, some playing in the professionals, and they tell me there were times where they'd be leaving a game, they'd travel every weekend. They were dreading getting on the ice. Their dad was yelling at them in the car after the game, telling them how bad of a game they played, or just going through that whole coaching thing on the ride home.
Absolutely.
Which, I want to say a quick thanks to my dad growing up because he was incredible. He kind of just let me play. He was a very high level soccer player, but he was not an overbearing coach when he coached me or a parent when he watched. He just kind of let me enjoy the game, and I really appreciate that, and I think that's why I wanted to continue to play for so long and had that love for the game.
Absolutely.
And as you said, kind of taking them away a little bit to create that hunger, I think is a big deal, because if the more they want to get out there and the more they want to go crush balls when they get out there, that's cool to see, and that's when they really have fun, and that's when they get creative and they enjoy it even more.
Absolutely.
So, there's probably a bit of a fine line here then, because we do, we get to the age, or our kids get to the age where, they're starting to enjoy it. They maybe are wanting to hone in a little bit. How do we know what's the right amount to push them and give them that free rein, and how much do we hold them back?
Awesome question. I think that it's important to sit down with that young athlete and just make sure that things are in perspective. I don't think that your life should really ever be about sacrificing, especially in those teenage years, sacrificing things until you really know that it's the investment that you want. So just making sure that there's a full perspective, and that athlete understands that you're there to be their assistant, right? You're not driving the bus. You're helping guide the bus, so to speak. So make sure that they understand that it's okay to take a day off. We struggle with that with some of our players. We just had our Christmas break from the Tour Performance Lab, and a couple of our players were actually scared to think that we were taking a 2 or 3 week break from our training, and that they might actually take a day off around Christmas.
Wow.
So that was, I was like, wow, I love days off.
Yeah.
Days off are great. You can just, take it all in, just go for a walk. You don't have to worry about anything and just relax. And they felt that this was strange. So it was good that they realized that days off are okay. They needed to be coached into it a little bit, but I think they got the picture. Yeah,
it's great. And it's, somewhat sad at the same time. They love it so much and they want to work so hard, but at the same time, having to pull them back and teach them that, rest is good, recuperation is good,
yes,
for both the body and the brain, and, taking that time off to spend with family or just do some stuff to be a kid, right? And have fun is very, very important
absolutely
in the way you grow. So another topic that we have to touch on is college scholarships.
Yes,
that's where a lot of this stems from, and I think that's where, from a parental standpoint, in many ways, that's where we get involved, because we feel, okay, this is maybe a shot for them, whether it be financially or just, hey, we think that they're doing great things and they can go to a great college. So at what point do we start looking at that and thinking about that, and how does that factor into our decisions?
Absolutely. Interesting perspective, and this comes from a colleague, another golf professional from a part of Canada that did actually go out and play university level golf prior to turning professional. I didn't actually experience that college golf environment. I turned professional right out of high school because teaching was my avenue. But his spin on this was that people get stars in their eyes all the time about, especially for us here in Canada, a lot of parts of the country get very, very cold, as do many parts of the United States. And if you're in one of those places, it's always this star in the eyes situation of, maybe I can get a college scholarship and go somewhere warm. And that's a great dream and all, but you got to remember that you're about to go off for 4 years, 5 years, possibly even more, out of your social circle. And you have to think, is this a social circle that I'm going to be able to stay connected with? Are these people and the friendships I'm going to make on these adventures at a new school going to be relationships that I can actually maintain realistically if I were to move back to my hometown? Do I want to leave my hometown and become someone that lives away from my original social circle? So that being one, and the other one being, if you're there for school, then that's one thing. Like, if you're really focused on a certain program, then make sure you seek out the schools that offer that program. And we can't forget that the academics is always a huge part of the scholarship process. So seeking out programs that make sense for you, both your scholastic needs and your playing situation. If golf is something you want to do at a competitive level, you should probably look into it and search out those schools that actually will offer you a chance to play on the team. It's all great to be part of a huge program, well-known program, but if you're just riding the bench because you don't quite fit into that category, then you've kind of messed up the chance to have the experience that you wanted to have. So these are discussions that we would have with the older players, maybe 17-year-old players, when they're actually starting to try and pick their college. But for those that are younger, when we start talking about the scholarship, it's a good chance to be that kind of that team meeting again and start the process of what does that player want. Not that I'm against going to college, but if that's a really high level player at 15 years old that's got a chance to really do it, finishing college right away may or may not be the best choice. They might play a season of college golf and then leave. We see it with some players. We see some players even skip the process altogether. Michelle, we did it almost in reverse.
Right.
So there's no one blueprint for everybody, but I think just making sure there's a healthy discussion amongst all the people that are involved, making sure that the dialogue's open, so that the player trusts to talk to anybody about it, because there's a lot of different opinions on it. I'm not one to really say that there's a right way or a right time to do it, but I think if golf has become their sport, or let's say they're active in another sport and they've honed in on something, just make sure that the whole support team is involved as much as possible, so the decisions can be made holistically and not feeling like they're pressured into anything from any one person or any one direction.
Yeah, I think just having that team and getting everybody together, talking honestly, truthfully, hopefully, with the youngsters, allowing them to feel like they have a voice in the whole situation too, because I know that going into a group discussion like that, being a young kid, 15, 16, 17 years old, and sometimes the adults are talking and we don't give them a voice or make them feel comfortable that they have a voice in that decision process. And, if deep down they don't want to do it, but everybody's saying like, oh, you could be great.
You could be amazing.
You could get a college scholarship. You could go and play pro, but maybe that's not really in their plans or what they really want to do. So I think we become, part of that mentoring, part of that team to help them with that. And then knowing if that is the route that you want to go, what's the work that's going to have to be done to get there?
Absolutely.
There's, I don't know if you done any work with Henry Brunton or read his book, High Performance Golf?
Yes, read the book. I've only met Henry once actually down at the the World Golf Fitness Summit. Sorry, there we go. That was the first time I met Henry. But amazing guy, really awesome stuff that he's put out and made available to everybody, because he has some stuff figured out there.
Yeah. So for all of you guys listening, I think I've talked about this book on the podcast before, but it's High Performance Golf by Henry Brunton, and I'll link this up in the show notes so you guys have a link to it. But it really just opened my eyes as far as basically everything that's involved. And this is the subtitle for this book is The Serious Golfer's Guide for Effective Training. And this is both for, I think it'd be great for parents to read it. If you're a high school age golfer or college age golfer, I think it's a fantastic read for you. Fitness coaches, teaching pros, everybody. This is a great resource for basically the way that the pros do it and what they're doing as far as from a training side, practice side, strategy, how they kind of plan their year. So like I said, I'll go ahead and link that up so you guys can take a peek at that. But just a lot goes into it, and knowing that that's the hard work that's going to be ahead of you. It's not just, hey, let's go play around in the sunshine and win $1 million. There's a lot more to it than this game. So. And
I think you brought up a great point there too, having parents read this sort of stuff. It's something we've made part of our programs to always have like parent info nights. These are just free sessions. The kids can come down and we can get them golf balls and keep them busy on the range while the parents have a chance to talk openly in a group with the instructors and just air all their questions. And because a lot of times we have families that the dad might not play golf, the mom might not play golf. They just saw it as an opportunity to try something for their kids, and then the kids fall in love with it. And now the parents go, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to do. And it's important to get them on board and show them that you do have a plan laid out for your child. you've got the support there, and that they can always come and ask anything. You start that early on with the family, and they become, your greatest supporter. But you learn so much, because I don't know everything. My other coaches don't know everything. That family might ask a question that leads me to go and dig up information that just makes my job a whole lot easier, because I just found this answer that I know a dozen other parents are probably going to come to me with. So start it early, make the parents, empower them, get them ready for what this journey is. As you said, it takes a lot to get to where you need to be. Just like anything worth anything, you got to work for it. So letting them know what's ahead of them, and then they can help be that awesome co-coach and alleviate some of the stresses that the player may be having along the way, because it's not a nice smooth road a lot of the time. So they need to be prepared for the bumpy times.
Yeah, it all boils down to communication, like most everything else in life.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to ask you for a few ideas for myself, for the listeners, both as coaches and as parents. What are some, you already mentioned a little bit of some of the games that you guys play. What are some other great games that we can use to keep our kids entertained, keep them engaged in the game, both when we're at the course, when we have the ability to be at the course, but also, like I live here in St. Louis, Missouri. We don't belong to a club. We don't live near a club, but we have a park nearby. What are some things that we can do away from a traditional golf course that can still benefit our kids on the course?
Awesome. For those that are able to get onto the golf course, if the kids are quite young, or maybe still very early on in their golf development, I suggest you get just a little duffel bag. This duffel bag, you're going to put a couple of like softball, baseball type balls, maybe tennis balls would be really good. Put a Frisbee or two in there. Always bring a spare. They tend to go astray and end up in the trees at times. And then a soccer ball, or something of that sort that you could kick. Now, if you're going out to play, say, a 9-hole round or a twilight round, feel free to bring the kids along, talk to the pro shop. A lot of times there'll be either they'll just waive the charge. I don't want to speak for all pros out there, but that happens quite a bit. Or there's going to be a nominal fee for the child to come out on the golf course with you. And then once you get to 50 yards away and there's no one behind you, hopefully always making sure pace of play is taken care of on this, get the child to start by kicking the ball. That's their tee shot. You're introducing how to keep score. You're introducing the different names for the shots. Once that ball comes to rest, then they must throw the Frisbee. That will be an iron shot. Once it gets close to the green, they could then bring out a wedge or an iron and hit a chip shot if that's where they are in their development. If they're not ready to hit chip shots yet, get them to try once the object gets on the green. Introduce the names and parts of the course. And this is a strategy that allows you to actually play your ball. You could play in a group of 3 or have 1 or 2 kids tagging along, and it actually moves very, very fast. Because at all times, in between shots, when it's safe, the kids run to the object. They don't walk, they run. Always make sure they're running to the object. Once they get on the green, that's a walking zone. That works really well for introducing the on-course type activities. Those that are not able to get onto a golf course, what I would say is get some almost golf balls. These are foam rubber, or you can get the birdie ball. The birdie ball comes in a hard adult plastic, and then a kind of a softer, somewhat squishy plastic. And the birdie ball is great because you can play in a park. You can make different objects at the park, the targets, and you just chase these things around the park. That's a great way to introduce the golf skills at a non-golf environment. As far as other sports that I really like to see the kids playing, I think soccer is probably my favorite. The footwork and the balance needed to be able to control the ball and be able to kick with both feet, I think it translates really well to golf because the balance is so dynamic in soccer. They have to be able to move quickly and stop quickly. We know with our training as kids develop, they need to both accelerate and decelerate. And I've never heard of a golfer wishing to have their legs be weaker. So soccer is great to develop some leg strength.
Awesome. Those are all great tips and examples. And I can totally see me taking my son up and doing some of that stuff at the park. So Very
Awesome.
very actionable advice too. All right, so let's get off the subject of the kids for a little bit. And
Sure.
I know you and I, we talked a little bit before the podcast and just shooting back and forth on Facebook, just the idea of keeping it fun and quote unquote having play in our own game as adults.
Yes.
How do we keep the game as fun as possible for ourselves, even for the serious golfer? And this isn't just, oh, let's just go out and goof around. This is, how do we engage in fun, active play while still training for a serious golfer?
Awesome. We were having a chat. Jeff and I were just talking over the last couple days, and a video came along my Facebook feed of a gentleman from Florida. I believe his name is Steven Jepson. And this gentleman is amazing. He's, as a lot of amazing people are, he's a little bit quirky. At least he comes off that way, but in such a wonderful way. He talks about how he never wants to leave the playground. In his perfect world, he's exploring and playing, balancing, jumping from rock to rock, creating challenges for himself to push his skill set beyond the average person by a long shot. And what I found making this shift from teaching the majority, when I first started, it was a lot of adults, teaching very much your typical stand out on the range, have a golf lesson, do this, do that, don't do that, don't do that. And then moving to teaching a lot more children, is that the things I do in my classes with the kids, they translate so well into an adult scenario. Probably the most so with the beginner golfer, because especially a lot of people that take up the game a little bit later in life, they are extremely intimidated. And the last thing they really want to do, I'm sure, is to stand in front of you and everyone else in the class and try and hit a 5-iron from a mat, or heaven forbid their first time is on grass and they send a big divot right over top of the ball. So introducing some of these skills in a games format. I play some silly putting games with the kids that I just set up the game, and I don't tell them really anything other than you hit the ball with this side of the club and space them out safely. So even if they take a massive swing, they're not going to hurt anybody, and just kind of let them figure it out for a few minutes on their own. They'll ask questions of how to do it, and I actually just don't answer their questions. I say, no, just give it a try. Just try it. And believe it or not, these games work really well with especially adult beginner clients. Now, those that have some experience in the game, I think probably the biggest thing that I can do for a competitive player that may be struggling is just show them the love for the game again. A lot of times their reason for poor performance or not performing up to the level that they think they should is just that they've lost sight of the things that really drew them into the game and the things that made their learning of the game so enjoyable, whenever that was. If they were a kid, they probably spent a lot of time on the driving range just kind of figuring it out and goofing around. So getting them to get in touch with that, whether it's trying to hit flop shots with a 3-iron or trying to hit the driving range cart, hitting a certain trajectory if that player's highly skilled, getting them to get away from the technical and get back more into, I guess I'd call it more of the spirit of the game, which is, most people that know me fairly well in our circle up here would see me as a very technical instructor, and I'm very technically minded in that I do like to dissect and understand the puzzle of the golf swing. But when I'm teaching a lot of people, I try to get away from that and just get them to experience the fun and the challenge involved with hitting shots. So that side is probably taken mostly from my experience with these young kids and how much they've taught me about how to learn this game and how to grow through this game. So it's changed the way that I teach people a lot.
Yeah, it's so fun to see kids and see the creativity that they have. And then, hopefully we can kind of translate that into working with our adult clients. That's what I think is pretty cool about the show. And I don't watch it too much, but the Big Break, where they have those different obstacles and different games. And I just think it would be so cool for a club like a local club to have like a big break day where
Absolutely.
you've got the pane of glass to break and you got the wall that you have to hit a flop shot over and all this different stuff, because I think that people would just eat that up and they'd have a ton of fun. And if the kids saw that, it just brings a whole different dynamic to it. And so
it really does.
I would love to see a lot more of that stuff coming in. All right. So I know that, your title at the lab is also the technical coach. But we may have to have you on the podcast again to kind of go into more of the technical stuff, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I want to get into just one more piece before we go.
Sure.
So, but I did want to highlight that because you mentioned that you get into the technique side and technical stuff too.
For sure.
I would be robbing the audience if I didn't ask, what's the funniest thing or best story you have from one of the kids at the tour lab?
I'm going to give you the one that shocked me the most, that amazed me the most. This was probably about May of last year, and I was scheduled to have a class of 4-year-olds for a 1 hour session, and 3 of them, this was their first class. They were all supposed to come in for their day 1 orientation, and 3 of them were sick. So I had this little boy, cute little guy, like really small for his age, squeaky little voice, and he comes up and we go over to our warm-up area, and our warm-up area starts with just skipping like you're having the greatest day of your life through just a perfect meadow on a perfect day. So he starts skipping, and he stops in the middle of his skips, and he looks up at me, and he says, "Coach, skipping turns our brain on so we can do more sports." And my jaw just hit the ground. This is a 4-year-old, and I run over and I get his dad, and I said, "Did you ever tell him that?" He said, "No, I don't know what he's talking about." And then I asked the mom, "Have you ever told him that?" "No, I don't even know what you're talking about." But this little boy had it figured out. Like, he had it all figured out. Just from like a couple skips, for whatever reason, this connected with him, and he said, "Skipping turns our brain on so we can do more sports." And I wish I could have had the original time on video. I did get him to say it one more time, so that one's saved in the memory banks for sure, and it's on my computer. I keep that one because every now and then it helps to show the parents. But that little boy, it was amazing, because he basically encapsulated everything I believe about developing an athlete in that one little sentence.
Yeah, that is so fantastic.
So yeah, pretty cool little guy.
Sometimes they just come up with the most brilliant things and funniest things. Yeah, kids are awesome. You can't say it any better.
They are. Yeah.
All right.
I've got to give you one more.
Yeah, bring it.
This was two summers ago. We had a summer camp, and every class, kids would roll in at about 8:30. We get started at 9, and every class starts with a warm up. So our warm-up starts with our skipping, some side shuffles, some karaoke, some throwing, some twisting, flexion extension, a whole bunch of movements. So he's there early, little guy, pair of glasses, pretty thick glasses, and just a cute, goofy look on his face. And he goes, "Hey, Coach, I'm bored." I go, "Okay, we're starting class in about 15 minutes. This is not a good sign. What do you want to do today, bud?" He goes, "I want to do track and field," because the day before we'd introduced some long jump using the bunker. So rake it up like a long jump pit, and the kids would run across and send themselves flying through the air. So I guess he really enjoyed it from the day before. And this kid, when he showed up the first couple of days, his breakfast that he showed up to the golf course with was like a Pop-Tart, some gummy bears, and like an apple juice or something. So myself and the assistant coach that was helping me, it's actually Coach Lindsay from our tour performance lab, Lindsay Mannion.
Absolutely.
We gave him the nickname that he was Sugar Bomb. So he's just a ticking time bomb. We'll just wait for him to crash. So Sugar Bomb wants to do more track and field. So we head off to the bunker, and he diligently helps and rakes up the pit, and he's all excited and gets it ready to go. And we ask if anyone wants to go first, and he's just like barely staying on the ground. He's so excited to do this. So he runs over to the end of the bunker and takes his steaming start at the jump, launches himself into the air, but instead of trying to land on his feet, he purposely just tucked his arms to his sides and launched himself through the air like a missile. He landed in a pile of really soft, fluffy sand. We were all, oh my goodness, I can't believe this has happened. Has he broken his glasses? Is he okay? He rolls over with the biggest grin on his face, sand caked in his eyebrows, and it's all going down his shirt. We go, are you okay, Sugar Bomb? He says, yeah, can I do it again? So that kid's enthusiasm, I'll never forget that one for sure.
Oh, I love it. And the name Sugar Bomb is fantastic.
Yeah, he was pretty cool.
Awesome. All right, man. So what has you all pumped up for the year 2015?
I'm excited to relaunch our Labster program. It starts up first week of February. We're expanding the class sizes, being able to offer 3 times the amount of hours and get 2 of my assistant coaches much more involved with the program. So each class will still be a 1-hour session, but we'll start a new session every 20 minutes. That means they'll get me for 20 minutes through their fundamental movements and their warm-up. They'll go see Coach Dan over at a short game station, and then they'll move on to Coach Nate and get some driving range time. So keeping the classes pretty dynamic, being able to offer more options for those families, get more kids involved, and be able to start moving our program into some elementary schools as well with using Snag inside the school. That's going to be something that starts up the middle of February. So pretty pumped to really reach out to much more families and share golf and activity with a lot more people.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it's going to be a great year.
All right, and do you have one last piece of advice you'd like to share with the 18 Strong listeners?
I would say remember that golf is a game. We play games because they're fun, and we can never, ever lose sight of that. If the fun is gone, then we need to try and mix it up a little bit.
Excellent. And where can the audience check out you and the Tour Lab and everything that you guys have going on?
Oh, yeah, you can find us on our website. That's tourperformancelab.com. That's a great source for just some info on our programs. You can also find us on Facebook, Tour Performance Lab there. And then we also have our independent Twitter handles as well as a Tour Lab on Twitter. So you can reach us through those and see what's going on with the lab.
Perfect. And the audience knows that I'll have all that stuff linked up on the show notes, so they'll be able to find you. I'm going to post up the video of Steven Jepson, and so they can see that stuff and you know, just some of the other links we talked about, the almost golf balls, and have some different stuff there. So we'll be passing all that stuff along to you guys. Chris, I want to thank you for taking the time tonight. Tons of great information for us to help out our kiddos, both as coaches and parents. So thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, Jeff, thanks so much.
You bet.
Take care.
You too.
All right.
Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Chris. I just think that they're doing some really cool stuff up there, and it was great to hear that they're starting to implement this stuff in some of the elementary schools up there. I think that's such a fantastic idea to bring it to the schools and really make the, you know, whether it be the physical education classes that they're getting involved in or what it might be, but, you know, bring some real training and structure to the programs that they have, because I know that, you know, sometimes these physical education programs don't necessarily provide a whole lot of athletic support and balance and, you know, teach these kids to actually do something that's going to benefit them and make them enjoy getting involved in sports. So it's very cool to see them developing their young athletes up there. One thing I want to highlight to you guys is, you know, we talked about the whole scholarship thing in this episode with Chris, and, you know, taking a step back and realizing that, again, golf is a game meant to be played for fun, and a high percentage of kids that are playing golf starting at the age of, you know, elementary age are not going to get any kind of scholarship to go to a D1 school, a D2 school, even a D3 school. Most of them aren't going to play professional golf and, you know, play at the highest of levels. So finding a way to balance out their practice, their play, so that they continue to love the game for a long time. And, you know, we preach on the 18 Strong podcast the idea of living a stronger life leads to playing a stronger game of golf. And so by teaching these kids some of the principles that are going on at the Tour Performance Lab are going to work for them in so many other ways than just their golf game. And so as you're working with your kids, or if you're a coach working with these kids, remember the fact that not all of them are going to be your Division I athlete. And so to help curate a love for the game where they're going to enjoy playing with you as a parent, or, playing with you as a coach for a long period of time, and enjoy those moments as opposed to pushing so hard to get to those higher levels all the time. There's times for it and there's times not for it. But remember to enjoy the game, enjoy your time with your kids out there, so they want to play with you. They don't go through those crazy years as a teenager where they hate their dad and never want to play, and then they don't pick up a club until they're 30 years old again and miss out on all those great years. So just once again on my soapbox. So thank you guys for tuning in to the 18 Strong podcast. Again, remember, follow us on Twitter. Reach out, ask any questions, any suggestions you guys have. Love to hear them. And train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.